Okay. Basic idea on the first question is less education and more learning. Maybe you are wondering about this distinction. In general, that means education comes from outside. Somebody else defines what you learn. What we should emphasize is more learning, intrinsic learning. And the most interesting projects in our perspective is exchanging best practice and learning on this peer level. These are the two basic ideas.
When we shall set up new educations blocks, like for process intensification, like we are trying to do in Sweden, e-learning could be a part of that, and that could be a project.
I would just like to make a short remark that, you know, education innovation is not something that was invented this afternoon and that we are going to do tomorrow. It's something that we have been doing for the last 100 years.
Yes, and what are you going to do tomorrow?
Continue.
Okay, we started the three main branches here were the consumer, industry, and the educational institutes themselves, actually educating the educators, so to speak. And if you go down the branches, you'll see that the foundation is how to motivate change. So that's the big question. That's the trunk of the tree, and do we feel responsible for that? And then going up the industry one, you have image, you have value, you have databases, apps, etc., different ideas. On the consumer side, QR codes on products, 3D, serious gaming, YouTube, etc. And make it fun to do something with waste. Competitive element to it. On the educational side, we had a lot of discussion, but really the link between industry and the practical experience into education, especially when you start talking about waste, I think is going to be critical, because not everything is fits to the theories. So you need to make those, obviously things like life cycle analysis is something which theoretically is well founded. It's working in industry, so that's something that should form a basis. Then as project, we had a lot of discussions. I think there are lots of ideas about projects. My personal favorite, and I'll say it from now, it's my personal favorite, is to basically teach a limited number of students the content. So what can be done with waste, what are the possibilities, and ask them to reach their peers. And whether they use e-learning, apps, WhatsApp, YouTube, or they stand in the middle of a square and shout. Basically organized chaos is what we're talking about. So trying to reach the people who need to know and ask them to teach the others. Because what at least I for myself realize, I don't think in the same way as my kids. And we need to find people who do, and those are the youth.
Okay, so the way we sort of interpreted what we were supposed to do today is to kind of come up with a paradigm, if you will, a framework for an energy efficient society. So we have here as an objective, we want an energy and resource efficient society. So what can we do from the educational point of view, also with companies and from policy to make that happen? So one thing that we would emphasize here is enabling technologies for efficiency. So obviously business is going to be a part of that. They could use apps that are designed within industry to do that, but what can we do from the educational side? Well, we can, for example, motivate students to design their own apps, to write apps for increasing efficiency. So one of the things we discussed was if you as a government, you want to innovate, to incentivize people to have solar panels or better energy storage for their houses. Can you write an app that people can go on, log on to this government website and say, well, how much money will I actually save if I put in this much to my house? And you can have university students write that as part of their kind of applied thermodynamics education. And that's then used both by the public, but in certain cases can also be used by industry itself. So we kind of emphasize that there is a feedback loop that's important, so that students, in addition to learning fundamentals, which we also emphasize, that's important, can also see what the science that they learn, how that can really impact society and how that can benefit from that. So that's what we came up with.
And I remember when I do a case study, I know the answer. So then you are bored as a teacher and the students will recognize that. So how can we get a win-win-win situation for teachers, learners and companies? And maybe the innovative factory, the duurzaamheidsfabriek, could be an example for that.
We had a table full of people working in education or training. So we very much focused on learning and education itself, not so much linked to a specific objective. And we had an open theme. So the basic assumptions that we talked about after the first questions were that innovation of education is not the same as digitalization of education. It was also mentioned in the presentations, but just to make it clear. And it was mentioned that all learners are very different and learn in different ways. So how can we adapt our training and our education systems so that learning can be as efficient and effective and therefore attractive as possible for our learners? That is the big why. So the project that we came up with, as for the second question, is to somehow make a kind of assessment tool or a scan to scan the students beforehand, before they start the learning process, to see how they learn best, because the students are so different. And then you can adapt your blended learning system to the different needs. And for this we have gathered a bunch of good suggestions to make the education more effective.
Our team was bio-based economy and technology. We started with a high-level discussion, but in the end we came up with a very concrete thing, at least we think, focusing in this case at awareness, promotion of awareness for various targeting groups. And we like to use, well, obviously with our partner here at the table, we came up in the end with a gaming or a simulation tool using the model of a biorefinery process, could be algae for instance, using the main parameters, input and output, make a simulation of this biorefinery, give it in a simulation environment to different target groups, and one of them, just like our other partner, our other table, could be students who try to, who are considering a new study like biorefinery or chemical engineering, to use it at the door of the university, which in the Netherlands nowadays is a hot item. But we could also use the different target groups. So awareness, educational tool in a simulation environment, a little bit like the energy transition model you might know already on the internet. You can play with parameters and look at the outcome. It's a very practical thing.
We ignored that we were energy and resource efficiency, and we took as an example of what would it bring to the organization of ONOV and CI. We had two items that we discussed a little bit more at length, and that has to do with bringing education and innovation closer together, so earlier from education towards innovation. And the way that we thought that it could be done is by bringing industrial problems, industrial people back into the classroom. But the classroom not necessarily has to be taken literally, as we are all used to think about it. What we think that we can do is define cases from industry, pretty open, and have students, undergrads and grads as well, work on it for a short time and use the ability of young people to think out of the box, be creative, and also work at high pressure in short time because they're used to working day and night when an exam comes up. So we could try and exploit that. And the way that we would like to do that is go to the human capital agenda and ask for resources, come up with a plan to literally make such projects and get it running. So not only talk about our tree, but try and build those bridges and have cases for students. As a side note, we noticed that this might be good to organize, not institution-based, but more open, as students with various backgrounds, both in the country as Europe or worldwide, could help with this innovation and thinking out of the box and confronting our students at an early stage also with people who have a slightly different background in the way that they think.